deal with the results and the elections in Zimbabwe. And this might be a litmus test now going forward, how you deal with this dispute, because the MDC has already said, look, this should be null and void.
Well, firstly, what has been the major concern to all of us? It has been how much the elections in Zimbabwe, particularly the past one, have been violent, serious violence. And that has been the issue. And that has been our major worry. Will they be peaceful or will they be violent? As I said earlier, we achieved a lot in terms of the people of Zimbabwe. It means the period of where they come from in a government of unity. People of Zimbabwe understood what had happened, and they were clear that this time around they cannot be on the wrong as the people. Now, the issue is no longer with the people that were a problem before. It is now the question of how the actual voting was done. In other words, the ballot papers, whatever. Not the people. The people put their ballots in correct boxes. But people, therefore, as you say, the Sangarai is saying there was a rigging. Now, once you make such a case, you've got to produce evidence. Because counting firstly is going to be done. And at the moment, we don't know which way it's going to go. But once the results are given, which then will make those who are complaining to say, here is a case. I think it's a question of looking at evidence. I don't think there's anything extraordinary here. Because once you look at the evidence, evidence is going to say, is there a case or no case? If there's a case, I'm sure that, to me, is an issue that many countries have dealt with. It's totally different from violence. I think what was really a worry was the violence. But since we didn't have violence, we can then debate these issues. We could investigate. The truth, I'm sure, will come. And I'm sure people will be able to say what is the truth and which way things go.
All right, let's move back home. Another headline that we read today, and I'm sure must be a concern to you, Judge Francis Lagodi resigning from the Arms Procurement Commission. Another resignation, Mr. President. Is that a concern for you? Because I'm sure that you would want to make sure that the public continue to have faith and trust that this commission will deliver a result.
Well, it is a worry, I must say. I did not expect it, particularly this time. I think in terms of the report, that commission very soon will be beginning its hearings. I think it is unfortunate. I was able to have an audience with the judge, as well as the chairperson, and in fact all members of the commission. The judge said he has made up his mind for personal reasons, and it was clear he has made up his mind. And of course, once that happens, and then if the judge says, look, these are personal reasons why I'm going away, I don't think you could prevail in any other way. That remains the issue, and I'm hoping that the remaining commissioners will be able to do the job.
So you won't appoint another commissioner?
Well, that is, I've not decided that as yet, because I've got to look, after the resignation has taken place, we'll have to look into that. The reason why I can't necessarily say now what's going to happen is because a lot of work had taken place. They're about to start. A new person will have to start, and that person will have to begin to climatize himself or herself over the period. That might impact on when the commission begins. That those are the kind of issues we're going to be looking at.
So when we read the papers and some of the comments that have been made, the leadership style of Judge Siriti has been brought to the fore. Is that a concern for you, or is this something that you've just put to one side?
Well, if for an example, the judge who has resigned, if those were the issues, because those were the issues that we'll have to deal with. But he said he was resigning on personal reasons. So you couldn't tackle the issue that has not been brought forward as an issue to say, look, here is a problem. Because I'm sure if that was a problem, there could have been a problem that we could have talked about at some point, if at all there were accusations, to look at them, etc., etc.
And then the other commission, of course, is the Marikana commission that's taking place, and the state is providing funds for the police to get full representation there. Whilst there might be no legal provision for the victims to get equal representation, there is a call for the lawyers of the victims to get some kind of assistance. Would the government consider perhaps coming to the party to make sure that we get to the bottom of what happened at Marikana?
Well, I'm sure we'll have to think about this, because that commission is very important. And also, if you take into account the families of the victims, etc., we'll have to think about it. I mean, what happened? The lawyers did not come to government to say, hey, government, we think these are the issues. And the matter had to go to court, and of course there's a decision. We will certainly look at that, because, again, when the commission started, the government did not brief those lawyers. They were briefed somewhere else. I'm sure that's where the question of the monies and everything was discussed. This matter has arose partly because the process has taken too long. You will recall that I had given it 4 months. It have gone very far. And I'm sure even those who had given a briefing in terms of the funding or the finances, they might have budgeted in terms of the time that was originally given. It has taken rather too long, and therefore that's why this matter has arisen. Precisely because of its importance, I think we are going to look into the matter and really arrive at some decisions which are decisions that must not prejudice those who are not in a position to offer anything. But I think the matter needs to be looked at, and we'll take a quick decision.
Okay.
And that's where we'll leave it for now. We will continue our conversation with the President after the break, where we will engage him about the burning issue of jobs. Do stay with us.
South Africa, welcome to the SABC News Channel, the channel that aims to provide you with all the daily breaking news and live updates.
Parliament's Chief Financial Officer Leslie Mondo was also sacked last month. Rianne Green, SABC News.
With broadcasts of events of national importance and cover daily news from the continent and beyond. Coming soon on DSTV Channel 404, SABC News, Africa's news leader.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
SABC News plays a critical role in providing unbiased and reliable news. We have a well-established reputation of uncovering, reporting and delivering news. A significant growth in popularity of our news demonstrates the demand for our news content. We continue to provide unrivaled coverage of vital events in and out of the country. Wherever the news is happening, we'll be there to bring them to you at the right time. No one has the news covered like SABC News. We lead and they follow. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
A very warm welcome back. You're watching SABC, and this is a dedicated news channel, the new kid on the block, as it were. But I've got to tell you, we've been broadcasting for 37 years, so we're not quite new to the news game, but certainly this is a new one for us in terms of dedicated news channel. And we've got a great guest in studio right now, don't we, Vibekshani?
Yes, we're in conversation, Peter, with the President of the country, Mr. Jacob Zuma. We're going to pick up now and talk about the burning issue of jobs, Mr. President, because Jill Marcus, the Reserve Bank governor, has expressed a lot of concern about job creation in the country, saying that it's not happening at a robust enough level. Let's take a hypothetical situation. You're now talking to a 35-year-old man sitting at home. He's unemployed. How is the government going to help his social standing and help uplift him?
Well, as you know, we have been talking on this matter. It's a matter that partly is influenced by the economic situation globally. You would know that our projections about the growth in the country were different before the global meltdown economically came in. That, in a sense, made people to lose jobs. Instead of us, with our program, we're going to be adding jobs. People lost jobs. And therefore, that began to make our economy not to perform at the level at which we had thought it will perform. We've been battling with this, and I think we've been doing everything we can to ensure that jobs are created. And I think whilst we lost jobs at a given time, but we have also created some jobs, but not at the same kind of percentage that we wanted to. I think there are figures that are coming out which are indicating we have created some jobs, but not enough, because the economy is not flourishing, so to speak. Now, if therefore you are sitting with the man who is young, who is not employed, really the issue, you can't produce magic. We've got to say the country has difficulties. We are trying our level best. We have, for an example, emerged with a very massive infrastructure program. That's part of government creating jobs, creating the environment so that the private sector could come in and invest. I think we've done a lot on that one. We've been working very hard. We are in the process at the moment to take certain decisions which are then aimed at how do we try to make our economy jumpstart them halfway, so to speak, to say, can we grow the economy faster? All I'm saying, if you take EU for an example, our traditional trading kind of partners, they're in trouble. They can't, for an example, do what they used to do with us in terms of the economic trade, whatever we do with them. Of course, we are also part of BRICS. We are therefore looking at new things that we are trying to do as a country. So all I'm saying, that whatever we are doing correctly, and we have got projects, quite a lot of them, which we are, by the way, we are going to be launching a lot of them in the coming period. But we can't say we are doing that as if the economy was just normal. Because of this, in other countries, you are not the only one. In other countries in Europe, for an example, people have gone protest for jobs. It has been very serious. There is no one who is not having a difficult. Even big economies have gone through this. But I think as a country, we have tried our best. And I think that's what I would be telling the man. We've tried our best, we're still trying, and we are hoping we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, General.
Mr. President, what about the disenfranchised youth? I'm talking about graduates that are leaving places of higher education that cannot find any work. What would you say to them?
Of course, as you know, we discussed that issue quite a while. You know that at one point I had felt that we needed to do something, talked about incentives. But of course, there was a difference of opinions. The matter was discussed for quite a while. It went to NEDLEC. We have come to an agreement. We have signed an accord together with the youth and youth organizations, government, private sector, etc. And I think that in itself was an indication to address the very issue we are raising with the youth, not just as government. Government has created an environment that we could, if we were talking to the private sector, for an example, come in and create jobs. But we have had an understanding, an agreement, and we have an accord that is living, that we have to implement jointly with everybody, including the youth.
Mr. President, these are the same people that I'm afraid you're going to have to be trying to convince in the coming months, because elections are just around the corner. And there's an interesting change in the political landscape, hasn't there? We've seen political parties forming, AHANG, EFF. And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on the new formations? And also, if Tlokwe is an example, perhaps some of the infighting that's happening in your own party as we go to these elections. Is this a difficult time to be president and head of your party?
It's a challenging time. ANC, it has a long history. It has had challenging times throughout its history. I think it has always succeeded to overcome such challenges. Well, if you talk about the new parties that are coming in, this is democracy. There's nothing wrong with it. Democracy, people have a right to form parties. If they have feelings, they have a right to do whatever. You can't say they mustn't, particularly emerging democracies. It is only old democracies that with time, they begin to consolidate and have few parties. The emerging parties, emerging nations, parties come into being. I think parties are going to be there. And as you know, it coincides again that it's a year before elections. As you know, that during elections, parties mushroom in various kind of parties, as you will see when they register, for an example. So there's nothing extraordinary about it. Because at the end, all of it, the question is, what is it that we say as political parties we are going to do for the people? What are the policies that we emerge with? Policies that are going to say to people, this is what we'll do for you if you vote for us. To me, that becomes the critical factor for political parties. What is that you are going to offer to me as a voter? Now, I can't vote for you because you are criticizing government, because you are criticizing the ANC, because we are saying every other thing, but we are not talking about me, who is a voter. Well, that's where the thing is. For me to think about my vote, you must be able to convince me. You can't convince me that I must vote for you because you are the biggest critic of the government and the ANC. What is that going to do with me? I need something that must help me as a voter, as a citizen. So I think that is what will be at the crux of what will happen as you go for the elections. As to the issues, as you mentioned, an issue in Northwest, these are matters that happen all the time. They've been happening everywhere. And politics is not a static thing. Politics, things happen. There are challenges at some point, and people manage to deal with those issues. At times, people don't agree, and that disagreement at times could move to the extremes. But politics is that, how do you manage all of that? I think, in a sense, as you asked, that during the time of our leadership, that's what tests the leadership. Are you able to lead the party from those kind of things and still move forward? What, for an example, I'm sure people are watching, what is it in terms of the percentage that the ANC will get in the vote? Because that will be the test that you could put and say, here it is, maybe it is because of X, Y, Z. I think that would be a point we should be interested, because we still believe in the ANC. We are still going to get a lot of votes from the voters in this country, because we have got a policy, we have got programs, we have got things to tell. But besides that, we have a track record already from 1994. We have changed South Africa. South Africa is something different today in many respects. And as we've been saying recently, we are going to be giving a report to the country generally as the ANC as to what have we done in the mandate they gave us since 1994. And we believe we have delivered, but we still also believe there are still a lot of challenges. So those are the matters that are going to count, rather than criticizing the ANC, criticizing its leaders, criticizing the government. Because to me as a voter, what is that going to do for me as a voter? I mean, any thinking politician will have to cross that line to convince the voter. Can't convince the voter by hating you, shouting at you, and think that somebody is going to vote for you.
Okay, perhaps a final question. Tata Madiba, how is he?
Well, it's as we explained, it's still critical but stable and responding to treatment, and I think the doctors are doing their best. We are happy that indeed he is responding and is coming steadily. So we are happy with that, and I'm sure at the right time we'll also issue a statement when it is necessary for us to issue a statement. So far, there has been no change, but he is under very good hands as doctors.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. President. It's been an honor and a pleasure having you help us launch our platform into the arena of being a dedicated news channel.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. I'm very happy too.
We'll be back with you after the break. Do stay with us.
Get all the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
I was taking the teaser on this.
For decades, the SABC has provided a ringside seat
for the events that have made history in South Africa and across the globe.
The SABC has opened a window on our world.
We talk to people making the news,
so you can make sense of events
in your preferred language
and moments in history that truly changed the world.
Whenever news happens, you are there
because SABC News is there
when you want it. Our news gathering draws from the SABC's extensive network across the globe.
At the heart of it all is this state-of-the-art studio.
And from the sports field, all the interviews, color,
and in-depth analysis from around the world.
It's comprehensive.
It's trusted.
This is SABC News,
Africa's news leader.
ZANU-PF claims landslide victory in yesterday's elections. Riot police deployed outside the MDC's headquarters.
We officially launch our much anticipated SABC News channel. President Zuma says it's the right time.
And another resignation rocks the Arms Commission ahead of public hearings.
And tributes for Madiba and the National Council of Provinces.
A very good evening. I'm Vabakshni Chetty. Welcome to our SABC viewers. We've just launched our primetime news slot on SABC, and welcome to this historic broadcast. From tonight, Peter Ndoro will be joining me every weeknight.
A very good evening to you, Vabakshni.
Good evening and welcome, Peter.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. And I've got to say, it's the 77th anniversary of the SABC, the 37th anniversary of the first television broadcast. Coming up in the show, we'll also be crossing to Zimbabwe for the latest on the elections. And to do our different regions as well, we'll be crossing to them.
Yes, very exciting times, but we will be crisscrossing the length and breadth of the country also and bring you reports from our reporters in various quarters telling the South African story.
All of that still to come. But first, Now, Zimbabwe is set for more political turbulence. The opposition MDC has already declared yesterday's election null and void. It says that the voting was marred by irregularities and is not a reflection of the will of the people. Final results have not been announced officially, but ZANU-PF is already claiming a landslide victory.
ZANU-PF supporters already celebrating victory. Zimbabweans have been clamoring outside polling stations for results and making their own calculations. At these polling stations, President Robert Mugabe is leading.
It's victory for President Robert Mugabe because I've gone all around the polling stations. He's on top and people are excited. And if it is happening in Harare, talk of his strongholds in raw areas and the like, we are comfortable.
Our candidates, there's quite diverse differences between the opponents and the ruling and the opposition, but I'm quite happy that finally I cast my vote and it's counted.
But others are anxious. The opposition MDC says the election was a farce and it will not accept the outcome. This despite the fact that official results are yet to be announced. They have cried foul over the voters' roll, high number of voters turned away, intimidation and the lack of transparency in the printing of ballot papers.
The election does not meet SADC guidelines. It is a sham election that does not reflect the will of the people.
The MDC's next steps are not yet clear.
For those MDCT MPs who are said to have won, this is not the moment to celebrate. This is the moment to be sad.
The final reports from regional bodies SADC and African Union are due out tomorrow. Early indications were that the vote was credible. Other observers have given the vote a thumbs up.
As ECF SADC, we have given our preliminary statement indicating that we believe that the elections were held as credible, free and fair elections, and therefore as ECF SADC, we are urging that the results should be accepted.
Both sides of the political spectrum wanted Wednesday's election to bring to an end a shaky coalition government and years of mediation by regional body SADC. But with the MDC now rejecting these elections, the nation is again on edge. Mahlatse Gallens, SABC News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
And for the latest on that story, we now cross live to our reporter in Harare, Shingai Nyoka. A very good evening to you, Shingai. The latest we're hearing is that the ZANU-PF is claiming landslide victory. Tell us more.
Yes, we spoke to the ZANU-PF spokesperson earlier on today. He's saying that the indications on the ground are that they have a landslide victory, which could, as he said, be about 2/3 of the parliamentary majority. He says that they have reclaimed many of the areas that they lost to the MDC in 2000 and 2008, including Harare, some of the traditional areas like Matabeleland, North, South and Bulawayo, which since 2000 have been areas of protest votes. But really we must emphasize that official results are not out yet. The rumor mill in Harare has been in overdrive since this morning when the election results were posted outside of the polling stations. Initially we had heard reports that MDC Secretary General Tendai Biti had lost his seat, but we've since heard from somebody else has retweeted the fact that he's actually won by a narrow margin. So at this stage there's a lot of tension because people aren't sure what is going to happen. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is yet to tally those results. We understand that in the next few days it could announce the results of the presidential elections as well as the parliamentary elections.
There's been lots of allegations of voter irregularity and vote rigging, and Tendai Biti himself was very vociferous today, saying that the voters' roll was shambolic, he said, and this was the worst type of vote rigging. Has any word come out from SADC and the AU observers regarding these allegations?
The initial election assessment from the AU Observer Mission Chairman former Nigerian President Obasanjo has given this process the thumbs up. He spoke to the media briefly yesterday, where essentially he was saying that they could live with the results of this election, that it had been conducted not in a perfect way, but that it was an acceptable result and could be credible. They're expected to give their full statement tomorrow. We're also expecting to hear the assessment of SADC, but many of the observer mission statements have already started rolling in, and many of them are endorsing this process, and we really don't believe that the AU and SADC will counter that. So really at this stage it appears that the movement for democratic change will be in a very difficult position. Many of the observers have taken note of the concerns, but they've also said that the MDC has done very little to substantiate their claims about the voters' roll manipulation. So really the tide appears to be against the MDC at this stage, and it's really anybody's guess what happens now.
And picking up again on those allegations, Shingai, what has the ZANU-PF party said about these allegations?
ZANU-PF has consistently denied the fact that they've manipulated the voters' roll, that they've committed acts of violence or intimidated voters and forced voters to attend their rallies. They say that they're a party that has never rigged elections, and also the fact, according to the allegations, that there's an Israeli company by the name of Nikuv, which apparently is working with the Registrar General's office. They say that that is not true, that this company has been working with the Registrar General's office on the voters' roll in previous elections, that it's a company that supplies software to the government, and the MDC hasn't complained before, so why should it complain now? So ZANU-PF vigorously still denying those claims, Vibhakshini.
Shingai, just look ahead for a moment. If we are to have a situation where there is indeed a runoff, how will that take place? Just paint a picture for us.
It's a very difficult prediction to make. What the MDC will do now is anybody's guess. We understand that they have been in crisis meetings all morning as some of the results began to trickle into them. They do have legal options. They are still able to lodge objections to the council elections, the parliamentary elections, as well as the presidential elections. At this stage, they haven't really said what their options are, to what extent they'll engage the African Union and SADC. But what Secretary General Tendai Biti said earlier on this morning is that they still have faith that the assessments from the African Union and SADC will side with them and will give them the outcome that they want.
Thank you very much. That was our correspondent Shingai Nyoka coming to us live from Harare in Zimbabwe. The United States is prepared to reduce sanctions against Zimbabwe if Wednesday's elections are shown to be credible and transparent, and if they reflect the will of the people. The State Department says early reports from the U.S. Embassy election team and other accredited observers show votes are being processed efficiently in a peaceful environment, but Washington says it will decide for itself whether the elections were free and fair.
Well, the Obama administration says it is reserving judgment on the outcome of Zimbabwe's elections, and we do expect a more official response once the results are fully consolidated. The U.S. State Department has acknowledged that the votes have been processed efficiently and in a peaceful environment, and has also said that it would consider a reduction in sanctions if the vote genuinely reflects the will of the Zimbabwean people.
We've made clear to the government of Zimbabwe and the region that further reductions in our sanctions will only occur if this round of elections, these next elections, are credible, transparent, and reflect the will of the Zimbabwean people.
But the U.S. would still require a certain level of proof, raising questions over whether or not it would accept the word of the South African Development Community and African Union observers on the ground. But some analysts are pointing to initial U.S. concerns over the fact that this election went ahead to begin with.
SADC themselves said that this was an election date that was hasty, that it was premature, that you still haven't seen the types of reforms in terms of the military, in terms of the police, in terms of the Electoral Commission, in terms of the media that are necessary to have a credible election.
Well, diplomats in Washington say they will decide for themselves if Zimbabwe's elections were free and fair. Analysts say that means that just because SADC says something, it doesn't mean the US will necessarily go along with it. On the other hand, the US State Department has signalled it may consider a further reduction in sanctions if Zimbabwe's elections were truly credible and transparent. Nina Maria-Potts, SABC News in Washington.
And later on in the show, we will, of course, touch base with our reporters in Zimbabwe once again to bring you a bigger picture of what's happening there. After the break, we're also talking with Communications Minister Yunus Karim, and Peter's in conversation with him. Do stay with us.
South Africa, welcome to the SABC News Channel, the channel that aims to provide you with all the daily breaking news and live updates.
Parliament's Chief Financial Officer Leslie Mondo was also sacked last month. Uyani Green, SABC News.
With broadcasts of events of national importance and cover daily news from the continent and beyond. Coming soon on DSTV Channel 404, SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Are we taking a teaser on this?
For decades, the SABC has provided a ringside seat
for the events that have made history in South Africa and across the globe.
The SABC has opened a window on our world.
We talk to people making the news,
so you can make sense of events
in your preferred language, and moments in history that truly changed the world.
Whenever news happens, you are there
because SABC News is there when you want it. Our news gathering draws from the SABC's extensive network across the globe.
At the heart of it all is this state-of-the-art studio.
And from the sports field, all the interviews, color,
and in-depth analysis from around the world.
It's comprehensive.
It's trusted.
This is SABC News,
Africa's news leader.
You're watching SABC News. Welcome back. Now, we're joined in studio by our new Communications Minister, Mr. Yunus Karim. Thank you very much for joining us, and a very good evening to you.
Thank you, and a good evening to you and the viewers.
You've literally had to hit the ground running, haven't you, in your new position?
Yes, quite. And we're seeking to finalize a program on the basis of consensus with the widest range of stakeholders for the period from now to May next year or thereabouts when the elections are held, essentially creating a foundation for far more effective delivery and development in the ICT sector.
All right, okay, so let's unpack some of the issues. For the start, first of all, I guess, SABC, a number of challenges that the broadcaster is facing. What's your take, and what do you see as the challenges that need to be overcome?
Well, firstly, I think that the shareholder compact, which is what government actually puts out with the SABC on what we think should be achieved in a financial year, has to be finalized. We're seeking to ensure that, in fact, in the shareholder compact, whatever the recommendations of the Auditor General in previous reports were, are included, and we monitor the achievement of those recommendations by the SABC. Secondly, of course, to fill in the critical senior positions that are vacant. It's also to finalize, well, it's Parliament's role, the new board that has to be elected before the end of September. And we gather that over 100 people have applied. It's also to work with the SABC and indeed other stakeholders to move towards digital migration, and also is to look generally at the financial sustainability of the SABC over the long term. And indeed, we have set up, as you might know, a joint task team between the Auditor General's Office, National Treasury, our department and the SABC to work cooperatively on these issues.
Are you happy with what you've seen so far and the turnaround strategy that's kind of been proposed?
It's early days to say, but my sense at the moment is, yes, there has been progress. Yes, the SABC is very, very challenged, but no, it's not as challenged as is made out in the public domain. And it seems to me that one of the tasks the SABC has, after all, you're a broadcaster, and a public broadcaster at that, is to communicate more about precisely what it's been able to achieve. I think if it did so, the public out there would feel more confident.
All right, so digital migration. Some people will be flabbergasted to know that countries like Tanzania have got it right before us.
Yeah.
Are we on track? Are we going to make the deadline? 2015 is just around the corner, Minister.
Well, we're going to put the collective shoulder to the wheel, as it were, to ensure it does happen. In any case, we have limited choice, as you know. The International Telecommunications Unit is talking about switching off analog in the middle of 2015. I should say in the first instance, though, that it's not just South Africa, but other countries that are challenged and have had difficulties in this migration from analog to digital, more established countries than ours. It is true, certainly, that on this continent, countries that are less economically advanced than us have been able to do it. So that's one of the points of leverage we have on the SABC, on other TV broadcasters and other stakeholders in this regard. Indeed, we've set up a committee to facilitate consensus so that whatever our narrow respective interests are, we recognize that it's in the national interest, in the longer-term interest of this country and its people, that we do effect digital migration as swiftly as possible. In short, yes, we're going to seek to do it. Yes, there's every possibility we will do it if we all work together. And ultimately, if we fail to do it, it's our collective responsibility.
And you're in an industry where people want certainty, clarity, things like spectrum allocations. Yes. And when are we going to get a final word and final order and clarity on all of these issues so that people can just get on with their jobs?
Quite. We have, in fact, under the previous minister, set up an ICT policy review panel. It has some 25 people in it from the broadest cross-section of the ICT sector, the private sector no less, the trade union movement, NGOs, experts, and the like. And this panel, we met last week, this Deputy Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams and myself, and senior managers in the department. And we spoke with them, and we have got from them a commitment that within 3 months we will have a green paper on ICT, after which there will be a discussion document based on the public hearings that will follow the green paper. And that discussion document will include what comments the public has made and stakeholders on the green paper. And then we're moving towards a white paper. At the moment, one wants to have realistic and realizable goals. So what we're saying is that we'll seek, as far as possible, to have this white paper out shortly before the elections in 2014. But if we don't, the incoming administration will be able to do so shortly after the elections.
And perhaps finally, does government really have to hold on to things like telecom?
Yes, that's an interesting question. That too is an issue that the ICT policy review is opening up for discussion. A decision on that will be made not just by government, but also by listening to others, not least Telkom itself. We met Telkom last week. These are issues that came up in our discussions. Certainly we have to recognize that Telkom has the backbone, the infrastructure that the country needs for advancements on ICT. And given the role of the state at the moment in the economy, we can find ways of ensuring that the state has a significant role with Telkom, but in partnership with others, as indeed is the case in the way the shareholder management is structured now with us as government, representing 39.8%, the PIC about 10 to 11%, and then there are other stakeholders there. We need this board and this management in Telkom to be far more effective and efficient than it is before we look at other options as well that you're suggesting.
Okay, Communications Minister Yunus Karim, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you indeed.
All right. Okay, we move on. Lots more to come still after this break. Stay with us.
SABC News plays a critical role in providing unbiased and reliable news. We have a well-established reputation of uncovering, reporting and delivering news. A significant growth in popularity of our news demonstrates the demand for our news content. We continue to provide unrivaled coverage of vital events in and out of the country. Wherever the news is happening, we'll be there to bring them to you at the right time. No one has the news covered like SABC News. We lead and they follow. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back. You're watching SABC News. As the SABC embarks on its new channel, a lot of its content is likely to come from the United Nations. A quick scan of significant events around the world reveals just why. From the conflict in the DRC, to which South Africa has contributed several hundred troops, to the civil war in Syria, the continued struggles in the Sudan and the steady progress in Mali, one is likely to find the UN is providing some form of support, be it political, development or peacekeeping or humanitarian relief. To talk about the role of the UN in geopolitics, I'm joined by South Africa's permanent representative, or rather, Sherwin Bryce Pease is our correspondent, and he'll be interviewing Kingsley Mamabolo. Good evening to you, Sherwin.
Babakshani, nice to see you. Thanks so very much indeed. As you mentioned, I do have South Africa's permanent representative to the United Nations, Kingsley Mamabolo, joining me here in studio within the Secretariat building of the United Nations. We happen to just call you Mr. Ambassador. So nice to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
Babakshani just introduced the very broad basis at which the United Nations approaches various issues around the world, be it humanitarian, be it politics, developmental issues, putting boots on the ground. It has a broad mandate, does the United Nations, and yet it hasn't really succeeded in arenas like Syria, the DRC, the Palestinian-Israeli question. Is the United Nations still relevant in the geopolitical world we find ourselves in today?
Well, first, Sean, let me say I think we ought to congratulate SABC for this launch. I would also say very timely indeed that you are launching this. But regarding your question, let me say United Nations is not very perfect. We are fighting as South Africa, as part of the developing world, to transform the organization. We consider that it is not right, for example, that Africa is not represented in the Security Council. But along with that, we're also saying not just the United Nations, but the entire branch good institutions would need transformation. Whether it is relevant, let me say this very briefly. Look, despite its weaknesses and problems, it continues and remains to be the only international organization that deals with this issue. So it is an arena in which we have to fight to ensure that it can intervene in all those areas and to make it relevant. It is our duty, it is an obligation on us, particularly those who are on the receiving side of some of these horrendous problems.
I mean, let's look at some of the arena where it does intervene, specifically in the African context. The DRC, of course, is a broad conversation here and at the African Union and around the world. South Africa has just sent over 1,000 troops into the DRC to bolster what is being called an intervention brigade. And given what has happened in the following what happened in the Central African Republic, a lot of criticism aimed at the South African government for sending in those troops. Why does South Africa believe so much in this intervention brigade, an untested brigade in battle and unprecedented in so many ways, by sending our troops into this battlefield arena?
Well, South Africa is a player very central to the solution of the problems, and I think this is recognized even in the United Nations. And so we've been very bold. We can't sit by and watch the conflict fall apart. Clearly we have done a lot. There has been a lot of improvement in the continent, But we still have those windows where you have serious problems remaining. And it is up to the continent itself to get involved. We can't sit comfortably and say, as a country that has been identified as a role player in the continent, we don't want to get involved, we don't want to be tarnished, we don't want to be affected by these kind of things. And we would want actually to take leadership in those areas. And certainly that includes involvement in all areas, including military.
Specifically regarding this intervention brigade, many member states have raised concern that the people this intervention brigade will be engaging, the rebels, the M23 in the east of the DRC, will not be concerned to make a distinction between what is an intervention brigade and what is the normal UN peacekeepers. The UN has 19,000 peacekeepers, to which South Africa also has contributed contingents. They're not going to make a distinction. Do we not put normal peacekeepers' blue helmets at greater risk?
Well, I think what SADC has pushed for and what has happened in the DRC is that we have changed the role of the United Nations in a significant manner. We have decided that the UN is not just going to sit by, as has happened. We've had numerous examples. I recall the struggle in Sierra Leone, where in actual fact the rebels would even go to the extent of taking weapons from the UN forces. And the struggle in the DRC has been going on for too long. And we are saying, where appropriate, it should be possible in defense of the people on the ground to intervene, even if it means using some force of some sort. And so that is what SADC has done. It is now regarded as a model. And the United Nations is actually looking at that as to use that same model in any other struggles abroad.
Let's move the conversation further north of the continent. South Africa has been quite outspoken about the removal of President Mohamed Morsi in Egypt and the unconstitutional change of government there. The AU immediately acted to suspend Egypt. But we've seen very sort of careful language from the United Nations. So I wonder, they've certainly not condemned what has happened in Egypt. So I wonder what the African ambassadors, what does the Africa group here at the United Nations say to people within the UN Secretariat? What is that conversation like? We calling it a coup, we've suspended, and you sort of, choosing your words carefully.
Well, I did say that we have an obligation as Africa to take the lead on these issues, and that's what Africa has done. We are bound by our own description of what happens in the continent, and insofar as Africa is concerned, it's unconstitutional, and any unconstitutional decision taken anyway ought to be condemned. And so you are quite right. The African ambassadors will be discussing this to say, how do we take this matter and ensure that the United Nations is also in line with the thinking of Africa.
Why is it not, though, Ambassador? What's your sense from these behind closed doors discussions that you're party to? What's the sense as to why the United Nations has not come out, as it has done in other conflicts around the world, particularly in the African continent, to condemn a coup is a coup is a coup? No?
Coup is a coup is a coup. And of course you are also aware that there are various interests all over the world, but we have our own interests as Africa, and that's what we are pushing. As far as we are concerned, any unconstitutional form of government must be condemned, and we must encourage those involved to move towards constitutionality.
This was a little before your time, but South Africa was, of course, part of the UN Security Council when it first appeared on its agenda, the question of Syria, which is now a conflict that has gone on for over 2.5 years. We just heard last week that the casualty number has exceeded 100,000. Millions of people have been displaced, impacting Lebanon, Iraq, various other countries, Jordan in the region. Is this, Ambassador, a failure of a United Nations broadly, the UN Security Council, or is this a failure of individual member states not to act?
Well, we've also deplored the situation in Syria. We have said that the United Nations Security Council in particular needs to act much more decisively. We deplored the fact that within the UN Security Council itself we have not had an agreement, which in a sense has delayed progress towards that. And again, as Africa, we would be calling on the UN Security Council to ensure that it does indeed get involved decisively and ensure a conclusion to this process, but primarily really to encourage the Syrians to find a solution that is Syrian-born, that is Syrian-endorsed by the people of Syria.
South Africa spent 2 years in the Security Council not too long ago. You then moved into ECOSOC for a 3-year period. Tell us about your work in ECOSOC and why this is also important moving forward as we move from the Millennium Development Goals to the SDGs come 2015.
Well, let me first say, leaving the Security Council does not entail that we are not dealing with those issues. We continue to. In fact, the issues in the Security Council are of importance. Very, very significant that we continue to be seized with those, to be in touch with those who are in the Security Council, and to give our input as much as we can. But of course, you are dealing, as you say, with Millennium Development Goals, post-2015 SDGs, and we would want to see that the United Nations takes appropriate decisions that would ensure that the affected people, the poor and on the ground, benefit from the decisions that are taken. And so we're very much involved with driving this process. We would want to see Africa as a whole making a bigger impact on that.
Ambassador, always good to see you. Thank you for your time today. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Sean. It's always a pleasure.
Kingsley Mamabolo is South Africa's a permanent representative to the United Nations, who, as I mentioned earlier, we just call Mr. Ambassador, and been in the job for less than 6 months. Told me when he arrived here that there's a lot to chew off at the United Nations, but we all think he's doing okay. So Peter Ndora and Vabakshini Chetty in Johannesburg, I have a feeling we're going to have a few conversations in the days, weeks and months ahead. What do you think?
Definitely. That was our correspondent in the US, Sherwin Bryce Pease, talking to South Africa's permanent representative, Kingsley Mamabolo. We'll be back with more news after the break. Do stay with us.
Has provided a ringside seat
for the events that have made history in South Africa and across the globe.
The SABC has opened a window on our world.
We talk to people making the news,
so you can make sense of events
in your preferred language, and moments in history that truly changed the world.
Whenever news happens, you are there
because SABC News is there when you want it. Our news gathering draws from the SABC's extensive network across the globe.
At the heart of it all is this state-of-the-art studio.
And from the sports field, all the interviews, color,
and in-depth analysis from around the world.
It's comprehensive.
It's trusted.
This is SABC News,
Africa's news leader.
ZANU-PF claims landslide victory in yesterday's elections. Riot police deployed outside the MDC's headquarters. We officially launch our much-anticipated SABC News channel. President Jacob Zuma says it's the right time. Another resignation rocks the Arms Commission ahead of public hearings. And tributes for Madiba in the National Council of Provinces. A very good evening. You're watching the news on SABC3 and on DSTV. I'm told Peter is on the interview set, ready to conduct an interview. Peter, it's over to you.
Babakshini, thank you very much indeed. Well, we've spoken to the President, we've spoken to the Minister of Communications. Now joining us in studio is the Chairperson of the SABC Board, Andile Shabalala. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Good evening. You must be quite proud today, being the Chairperson of the Board on such a historic day for the channel.
Yes, I am. I am very much. A point of correction, my name is Zandile.
Sorry for that yes. Mistake.
No problem.
So, historic day for the SABC and as the chairperson?
Yes, I must say the leadership of SABC before saw this coming. They really, really wanted it, and they have creative ideas about how it's going to pan out. Subsequently, it just got a little bit stifled. So we're just delighted that we've ignited that excitement in SABC by pushing for the decision to make it get launched.
And what do you see the role of a channel such as this, news department, as a public broadcaster being?
Well, SABC, by its feature, has a public mandate. And for us, you have to make sure that you reach out to the distressed, to all the communities in South Africa and beyond the borders. Because in this whole diaspora, everyone wants to know what's happening in another country. And our timing is very correct, where we are heading for elections, and we want to make sure that we cover with excellence.
The constituting of the board has got a bit of a history that's been well publicized and dramatic at times. Where are we now in the phase of board level and going forward?
Unfortunately, what we've learned is that, in all parastatals are different from this particular parastatal. I think it's important to note that SABC is guided by the Act, and the Act is prescriptive on how many people have to be in the board and how many executives have to be in the board. So up until it's amended, then it can operate like all other parastatals. But for now, it's guided by the Act, and we have to follow what the Act says because it's law.
So what are you hoping that you can achieve in this interim period?
In this interim period, in fact, we have achieved a lot in terms of just going through the Auditor General. I mean, before SABC was audited by commercial audit, and now it's AG. There was a lot of learnings to draw from the Auditor General. It was a very difficult time for employees of SABC. We have also had a report from Skills Audit, because as you know that, people get to different broadcasting companies, sometimes not because they are very frustrated, but because there is just no ambition and there's nothing that is creative for employees to enjoy where they are. So we have had a very gruesome exercise of a skills audit, which is going to be guiding the business on what skills are necessary for South African broadcasting.
And when do you think we'll start to see appointments, certainly at senior level, that have been outstanding for some time?
The vacuum at the top is actually halfway filled. We have already ran with interviews, and we've employed group executives of different areas, human resources, strategy, compliance, and so on. So we are heading just to fill up a few positions, then we can move. But otherwise, already there is a lot of work on the ground.
All right. So what other challenges do you still have on your to-do list as a board, do you think?
The challenges that for me really are on top of my head is the audit. And a lot of improvement still has to happen in terms of environment control. We also have to just bring that change of culture in the organization, that you are in the right place and there's an opportunity here for everyone to grow. But as well, what is also a challenge is how we could come up with a funding model that is sustainable in SABC.
All right. I would imagine that that funding model will be quite a challenge, and the mandate of the public broadcaster, on the one hand, to make money, but at the other, to be a public broadcaster.
Yes.
Some might see them as contradictory.
Yeah. No, it's very, the funding model is different, I must be honest. It was the striking feature for us who come from outside. But be as it may, we are making suggestions to our principals, the ministry, and to Parliament that, once we work at a better funding model, then we can plan ahead for SABC going forward.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chairperson, Zandile Shabalala, thank you very much for your time and sharing your thoughts with us on this historic day for our channel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, okay. So, look, there seems to be quite a lot of excitement in the Twitter sphere about the launch of the SABC News channel on DSTV tonight. And some of these messages that have been coming through, William Lunga says, Jacob Zuma on the new SABC channel. So that was a little bit earlier on, an hour ago. Of course, if you hadn't watched that, you might have missed that. Our very first guest on the channel was the President, and he had quite a bit to say on a number of issues that we discussed. We also getting more tweets. Basically, I think relief that the SABC News has finally launched on Channel 404 DSTV. Lungelwa Shandu says SABC News Channel has launched with First Citizen on hot seat. There we go. Thank you very much indeed for that tweet. That was about 60 minutes ago. And Peter Metcalf says, great opening for SABC News Channel 404. May all your questions be answered honestly. Go, Peter, he says. Well, we've got a fantastic team on our channel that we'll be introducing to you during the course of the next hours and days. Great team, in fact, we're very proud to have with them. So all of that still to come. But first, let's go back to the news desk, because Vibhashini is standing by to welcome some more guests for us. Vibhashini?
Thank you very much, Peter. Yes, we're going to talk about this partnership now between the SABC and MultiChoice. And to do that, we welcome the corporation's GCOO, Hlaudi Motswaneng, and the CEO of MultiChoice, Imtiaz Patel. A very good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for coming through. Let's start with you, Mr. Motswaneng. This is a unique partnership. How did it come about?
Thank you very much. You know, we have been struggling for more than 12 years, just talking about 24-hour news channel. And some of people who dream otherwise, they were thinking that we are not going to make it. We have done it, and we will always succeed at the SABC.
Now, Mr. Patel, what are the expectations of MultiChoice from this channel?
Well, the SABC is a very strong brand when it comes to news, and we think that it will add tremendous interest and diversity to the content that we offer to our subscribers. For the SABC, you know, we have roughly 5 million homes who have access to DSTV in South Africa, which translates into 15 to 20 million people. It's a wonderful platform for the SABC to generate revenue via advertising. But in addition to that, I think that there are viewers out there who are very interested in getting an alternate perspective on what is really happening in South Africa. And for us, that's a very important offering in terms of what we can offer our viewers.
With the partnership, let's talk a little bit about the broadcast footprint. How far will the reach be?
Well, at the moment, it is Southern Africa, so it goes beyond the borders of South Africa. And then, obviously, we have plans for the channel when we complete our discussions for it to go into the rest of Africa. But at the moment, it covers Southern Africa.
Now, how do you think we can have an edge over our competition? What's going to set us apart? Because there's another network out there, but what makes us different?
You know, the reason why people were so afraid about this channel is because we just crossed now to New York, we crossed to Zimbabwe, we crossed to provinces. I mean, SABC, we have all facilities in all provinces. We have bureaus in some of the countries in Africa, including New York. For us, it is exciting. But what is important for us, we should be a public broadcaster that is responsible. You know, newspapers should quote SABC. We should not follow newspapers. They should follow us. We should dictate. No one should dictate for SABC. But also, what is key for me about this channel, especially when we talk about the youth, you know, most of the youth, they struggle when it comes to getting jobs and so on. What we are going to do, we are going to have a program to address the youth, especially we are targeting the tertiary, where people who are doing journalism, media, so they are going to produce documentary. So we are just going to give editors to guide them. They should produce so that they do practical work. You know, when they go and apply for jobs, it's easier for them. We are also looking to make sure that we develop the youth of this country.
Let's just pick up on that, because you said that we have the mandate, we certainly have the resources. Many then would question, why has it taken the SABC, the public broadcaster, this long to get a dedicated news channel? What have been some of those challenges?
You see, I can't answer that one because I was not a leader. This time I'm a leader. I'm part of management of the SABC, so I can just talk about the current.
Then tell me your vision as a leader now for this channel going ahead.
My vision is we should speed up the DTT so that the channel can come and be seen by all people of South Africa. But also, we are also saying people should not dictate who SABC should do business with. We should, SABC, dictate ourselves. We have partnership, historical partnership. This partnership, it is not new. We have partnership coming from sports. SABC Africa in the past, they were also involved. We are saying MultiChoice is the right platform for our own ordinary people to watch when we move to DTT. But also what is key, especially at the rural areas, is where some of people, they don't have water. Decision makers, government, they will be able to watch such stories, which are unique stories. So we'll be able to tell them what is happening in the country, what are the issues in the country. So we'll reflect those issues, but we can't be dictated by print media or other people.
Mr. Patel, is that one of the key reasons you think that this platform will fit into your bouquet?
There's no question about it. I think the SABC has a special resonance with the majority of South Africans. I watch Morning Live almost every single morning, even though I'm working, it's in the background. It has a special resonance. So we think it will bring something really unique and something really special to our audiences. The President this evening, when, just prior to the launch of the channel, spoke about how there is a need for the positive stories about the fantastic things that have happened in this country to be told. And I think very little of that really is told. And I think the SABC will bring that kind of element to it. But for our views, it brings diversity. It brings an alternate viewpoint. We can then compare in terms of how a particular story is covered by one channel versus another. And I think that will be very interesting.
Mr. Motsoeneng, we have many detractors. What would you say to the people watching now? Because they're questioning things like, is this financially viable? Will this be a success? Is this sustainable? What would you say to them?
More than sustainable. You see, you need to think on your feet. You need to be creative. People just concentrate on the problems. I don't see problems. I see challenges. You should face challenges. Like now, we have been able to negotiate with MultiChoice more than 500 million, 500 million. Who can do that? I mean, if you focus on the problems, you become your problems yourselves. You can't move on. But what is key? I mean, if we are able to raise 500 million, 500 million, who said we can't raise 1.5 billion after 5 years? Who said we can't generate revenue? I said to the SABC team, if you want to charm someone, you can't use email. You need to go there and charm someone. Because most of the time people sit in the office, send emails. How do you charm a person? You need to go and charm people who are advertising. Even our own journalists, why they are quoting newspapers is because they sit in the office. If you are a journalist, you need to be there on the street. You need to have sources that when you talk about the story. That is going to happen. We don't just want to talk about the rumors. But also what I want to say, for me, this will also, we are going to make sure that we convert our own freelancers. They should be permanent. They can't freelance forever. And for me, I'm also saying it is wrong for freelancers to freelance for SABC for more than 30 years. It is abuse for those workers. We are saying it should not happen, especially when we are a public broadcaster. Those are the issues that we need to deal with at the SABC.
Thank you very much.
He's charming and he's a tough negotiator.
Exactly. I was going to say that was our GCEO, definitely on the charm offensive, Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng, and CEO of MultiChoice, Imtiaz Patel. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Now, we're going to go to an ad break, and we'll be back with more news after that. Do stay with us.
For incisive, thought-provoking and unrestrained debate. The question is, where do you begin, though?
If you're going into my backyard, you're going to play in my backyard.
I don't have 21 days. I'd like to solve this.
They would like to work with you, but are troubled about what they refer to as your history of intolerance.
Okay, I'm going to do an EFT for you.
It sounds really good.
I cannot take from Peter to pay Paul because ultimately it is not sustainable.
There's nobody who's ever going to just take. If you do that, you're arrested for disaster.
The Forum at 8, every weekday between 8 and 9.
South Africa, welcome to the SABC News Channel. the channel that aims to provide you with all the daily breaking news and live updates.
Parliament's Chief Financial Officer Leslie Mondo was also sacked last month. Uyani Green, SABC News.
With broadcasts of events of national importance and cover daily news from the continent.
Welcome back. You're watching a historic broadcast this evening. You're on SABC3, but also on SABC's new dedicated news channel, channel 404 on DSTV. And today we've been bringing you some guests and talking to some key people that are bringing this story to you. And joining me now is the Group Chief Executive Officer of the SABC, Lulama Mokhobo. A very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. A historic moment. You must be quite proud.
Extremely proud, and good evening, Peter and the viewers. You know, it's been a long time coming. And when I started here last year, it was one of my big things to tick off. And I am so happy that it has happened now.
So has it been a highlight then definitely for your tenure so far?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I've been here only 18 months. And to have finally arrived where the team is strong, it's ready, and they're moving, and they're doing this for me. It's, yes.
Take us through the process that took us to this point. What's been the journey?
Peter, the journey has been one fraught with problems, mainly financial issues, where we knew what we wanted to do. We knew we had the capability, but there was never enough money to do it. And ultimately, when MultiChoice came forward and said, guys, you know, as a private company, we feel an obligation to support the SABC, to support a public broadcaster, and we'd love to work with you. Come, let's talk. So we had a team of very strong negotiators, I must say, constituted, led by Saudi. And they boxed it all together. And I was quite amazed at how quickly they were able to come back with results.
All right. Yeah. So your message to the viewers at home, what is your vision? What would you like to see this platform do for the South African public?
Tell the full South African story. The short sound bites that we've been having to do because we just never had enough time, I don't think have done a good service to South Africans. And people need to know the story behind the story. We've never been able to do it. And finally, we can do it now. And more than anything else, the tendency has been to show only the negative news. It's time South Africans began to be proud of their country. We're not all about doom and gloom and corruption. There are lots of good people doing wonderful things. And as a country that needs to be recognized as a global player, this is the opportunity. And remember, we are not only South African, we're Pan-African. So before long, currently we are already on SADC. With today, we're already on SADC. And in the not too distant future, we'll be able to play on the Panamsat 10, which will take us right up to bigger parts of Africa.
And I would imagine, I suppose it's important to let the viewers know as well that logistically this is a first step, because some people might say, look, it's on DSTV, a lot of people don't have access to it, but this is the first step. There will be the digital era coming through next.
You know, I'll tell you my huge disappointment because we approached ICASA for a spare channel. That's where we started, because we wanted to start directly with everybody, every citizen having access. And unfortunately, there were no more free frequencies available, which meant we had to wait for DTT to emerge and to actually start happening. And we realized that while we're waiting for DTT, we really do need, the urgency was becoming bigger and bigger for us to be able to do the right things. And so we decided that, yes, we will go onto the MultiChoice platform. Hopefully it will be for a very short period because we're all looking forward to the switch over to DTT. And when that happens, the second we switch over to DTT, the channel will be on DTT. So I want to ask the South Africans who have no access to DSTV to bear with us. They are going to get access, and hopefully by that time we will have honed our skills so well that the broadcasts will really be amazing. And I'm really, really looking forward to that.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, but thank you very much indeed. Congratulations on this historic launch, but thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this day.
Thank you, Peter.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we've been chatting to the Group Chief Executive Officer of the SABC, Lulama Mokgobo. Babakshini?
Thanks, Peter. Now, on the eve of preparing for public hearings, Judge Francis Lehodi resigned from the Arms Deal Commission. The commission is probing the 90s arms deal.
The commission set up by President Zuma last year has amassed mountains of paperwork. It was widely expected to find the smoking gun. Instead, it's been bogged down by a string of resignations. The latest to step down as a commissioner, Judge Francis Lehodi. This follows the resignation of senior attorney Norman Moabi and researcher Kate Penting. Analysts are questioning the credibility of Judge Willie Siriti.
A lot has been said about the chairperson of the commission, Justice Siriti, as being problematic and therefore leading to other members of the commission really removing themselves or resigning from being part of the commission. Now, that ought to be investigated. Is the judge the problem, or is the judge really somebody who is being used as a puppet?
One of the witnesses, Terry Crawford Brown, has accused the commission of protecting perpetrators. This after he was alleged to have furnished the commission with conclusive evidence. Newspaper reports suggest that Judge Francis Lehodi's resignation is because of Judge Willie Siriti's leadership style and the secrecy surrounding the commission. But the presidency issued a statement saying Justice Lehodi's resignation is because of private and personal matters. Ofed Testimo, SABC News, Pretoria.
The late Chief Justice Pius Langa has been lauded for his role in the transformation of not only the judiciary but the country. Today, scores gathered in Durban to pay tribute to the late Chief Justice. Langa died last week after a long illness. He was 74.
Former Chief Justice Pius Langa's death has been described as a huge loss to the judiciary and legal fraternity. Langa was born in Bushbuckridge in 1939. He obtained his law degree from the University of South Africa and was admitted as an advocate in 1977. In 1994, he was promoted to senior counsel. Judge Langa went on to become one of the 10 first judges of the Constitutional Court. In 2005, he became the first black Chief Justice until his retirement in 2009.
Chief Langa's passing away calls on all those who value our Constitution, including the transformative agents and organs of civil society in the areas of justice and the law, to give space to transformation of both the judiciary and the legal profession.
His colleagues say he served with honor.
As he made his way up the leadership ladder, he did not lose his common touch. He did not allow ascendancy to high office to get into his head. He retained his modesty throughout.
To his family, Langa was a gentleman with strong family values.
As a father, we could not have asked for a better father. Not just because of the guidance that he gave us, but especially because of the love that he showed us.
Langa's official funeral will be held on Saturday in Durban.
I thank you.
I am Mhlongo, SABC News, Durban.
If you can.
And we now say goodbye to our viewers on SABC3. Our normal newscast will return tomorrow night at 6:30, where we'll have Nompu doing her business slot and Simon Burke doing the sport.
But we'll be continuing this special broadcast on DSTV. Riot police have been deployed outside the headquarters of Zimbabwe's Movement for Democratic Change. This after the ruling party, ZANU-PF, claimed a landslide victory in yesterday's elections. The deployment came only hours after MDC party leader Morgan Tsvangirai dismissed the elections as a farce. Wednesday's voting was peaceful, but the MDC's outright rejection of the vote raises the prospect of a dispute. An independent election monitor group in the country also called the credibility of the vote into question. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch says that the African Union's endorsement of the poll is premature.
There are high expectations from people who want the next elected Zimbabwean government to deliver. Millions living here want their lives to improve. Nomak Mahlangu is one of millions who's voted. 2 of his 6 children fled to South Africa for economic reasons. Analysts estimate that over 50% of the population is living in abject poverty.
He hopes his vote translates to a better life for all Zimbabweans so that his children can return home.
I'm struggling. I don't have anything. If my government can hear this time so that I can improve.
This is where the unemployed Nomak spends his time. Every day he battles to find something to eat. Thank you very much, Babu Nomak.
Okay.
On our arrival here, Nomak was boiling water, and that's about the only thing he will have today. But Nomak's situation is not unique. Millions of Zimbabweans who say they went out to vote yesterday want a better Zimbabwe. And that's exactly what Nomak wants. Analysts estimate 90% of the population is unemployed, and the incoming government will need to expand the economy and attract investment, which is vital if this nation wants to succeed.
The restoration of services, be they in education, be they in transport, be they in health, and so on and so forth.
While politicians bicker and fight, Nomak waits for the day when Zimbabwe will become a breadbasket again. Crisalda Lewis, SABC News, Bulawayo, Zimbabwe.
All right, you're watching SABC News, a 24-hour news channel, and we'll be back after the break with more. Stay with us, don't go away.
South Africa, welcome to the SABC News Channel, the channel that aims to provide you with all the daily breaking news and live updates.
Parliament Chief Financial Officer Leslie Mondo was also sacked last month. Uyani Green, SABC News.
With broadcasts of events of national importance and cover daily news from the continent and beyond. Coming soon on DSTV Channel 404, SABC News, Africa's news leader. South Africa, welcome to the SABC News Channel, the channel that aims to provide you with all the daily breaking news and live updates.
Parliament Chief Financial Officer Leslie Mondo was also sacked last month. Uyani Green, SABC News.
With broadcasts of events of national importance and cover daily news from the continent and beyond. Coming soon on DSTV Channel 404, SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Are we taking the teaser on this?
For decades, the SABC has provided a ringside seat
for the events that have made history in South Africa and across the globe.
The SABC has opened a window on our world.
We talk to people making the news
so you can make sense of events
in your preferred language.
And moments in history that truly changed the world.
Whenever news happens, you are there.
Because SABC News is there.
When you want it.
Our news gathering draws from the SABC's extensive network across the globe.
At the heart of it all is this state-of-the-art studio.
And from the sports field, all the interviews, color,
and in-depth analysis from around the world.
It's comprehensive.
It's trusted.
This is SABC News,
Africa's news leader.
Good evening. You're watching SABC News, and we've been having a number of special guests. We started with the President of South Africa, President Jacob Zuma, and I've got to say we're very pleased to be joined in studio now by the Lesotho Prime Minister, Minister Tom Thabane. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So you've come specifically to witness the launch of this channel,
Yes.
and I would imagine that with the we're more than kindred spirits, Lesotho and South Africa, that this is an important development for your country as well.
We certainly are. If people at home will switch into one of the local stations, but they will also very much switch on to Lesedi.
What would you say is the expectation then of the people of Lesotho?
Yes, the advantage with Lesedi is they speak exactly the language we speak at home. So somehow we think it's our station. Also, I think the program in there does suit our viewing, and I think we find it profitable also to look at Lesedi. Sometimes when people in the house have one set, one says I'm having Lesotho and the other one says I want Lesedi. So I think we balance the two in terms of viewing. But increasing the viewership of Lesedi to the extent that you've done is going to be quite helpful in the sense that you are doing something that not so many people thought would happen. But secondly, something now that provides even more service in a in a situation where we've had quality service up to the point that we're getting service. So we look forward to quality service from Lesedi, the same quality that we got. For me personally, it's a joy to come here because in the first place, it's always good for me to meet the President personally. We don't have much time to do that anymore now. We're growing much older and so on, and people are condemning us left, right, and center. We're trying to justify our existence. But also, the CEO here, Hlaudi Motsoeneng, has always been very keen on reporting events in Lesotho, on Lesedi. And our people who work in the mines, our people who work all over South Africa, welcome that development because then they get some news from home, said by a station that they capture very, very clearly. So there is a lot of mutual exchange between us and them, and mutual benefit which we get from the broadcast of Lesedi. So, yes, it's good to be here.
So political developments that have been taking place north of our borders affects Lesotho as well, because I know that Zimbabwean migrants have also made their way to your country.
They made their way into Lesotho.
So your thoughts on what's happened and the announcement that the MDC has made and what SADC can do going forward?
I find this situation disturbing because if it repeats itself over and over and over, and the same people, the one winning, the other one complaining, the one complaining and the one winning, and so on, we get to wonder. We were in Maputo recently when they report to us the progress they had made on agreeing on the election date, and so on. And on my way back, I shared a seat in the plane with Morgan Tsvangirai. And I said, why don't you guys just get on with it? It's your country. It is never going to be anybody else's country. Why don't you just do it? And I said so knowing how much problems we've had in Lesotho ourselves with elections. But we came round and we just had an election now, which nobody really won, but which reflected the will of our people. And there is a fair amount of stability now after we had the last election. And one was praying that the Zimbabweans would somehow this time around surprise all of us and get it right. It's very worrying, actually. It is worrying.
We'll definitely be watching that story. But Prime Minister Thabane, we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you very much indeed for gracing us with your presence on this day.
It's been great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right, and I know that from Lesotho we're travelling even further afield, Babakshni.
Yes, indeed, Peter. We did promise you a global perspective, and that's exactly what we're going to deliver. We now crossed our correspondent in London, Natalie Fury. A very good evening, Natalie. What are the top stories in the UK?
Well, there's a big story going on in relation to the phone hacking scandal. Now, we hear that 134 people have been arrested, well, in the past have been arrested as part of this, and 34 people have been questioned under police caution. 3 people who work for newspapers have been released, but this is part of the ongoing police investigation into the phone hacking scandal. This, of course, came about a few years ago when journalists from the News of the World newspaper, the Sunday newspaper, which has since closed down, they were alleged and then found to be hacking into people's phones. This included celebrities, members of the royal family's aides were hacked, and even worse, even people who had been murdered, their phones were hacked, led to a big, wide-ranging investigation, and 34 people, I said, being questioned as a result of that. And in relation to privacy as well, we have heard the Home Secretary, Theresa May, said that she will have private investigators needing to have licenses from 2014. They will have to pass certain requirements because she has said that people's privacy is being breached. Private investigators without any license at all, for example, looking at people's records, perhaps using means that are not legal of finding out information on people. So that also a major issue, and because privacy is an issue that is being dealt with at the moment. So this really an extension of what we've seen on trying to crack down on people's phones being hacked, their computers being hacked. Among other stories we have seen recently as well that's still making headlines is the fact that the head of the Church of England, Justin Welby, was rather embarrassed after he found out that the Church of England has invested in a fund that invested in Wonga, an online lender that he himself said he would look to compete out of business. He said that this is immoral. The interest rates that are charged to people, making people further in debt. The charges are about up to 6,000% a year. So his idea is of starting credit unions with money from the Church of England to charge lower interest rates for people that need to do so. But it then was since revealed that, in fact, the Church of England, that I said, had invested in a fund that had been investing in Wonga. So rather embarrassing for him, but he maintains his position that he wants to compete lenders like that out of existence. Elsewhere, we have seen in terms of the UK's economy some pretty good news in terms of growth. We heard in the last few days that in the second quarter, so that's in the past 3 months, growth jumped to 0.6%, up from earlier in the year. So it looks like the economy in the UK is improving. The Bank of England met today. They kept interest rates as they are. They're not going to provide any further stimulus measures to help the UK economy because that data that we've seen and other data has proved rather positive. Good news, of course, for the Chancellor, George Osborne, because he has stuck to his austerity measures despite criticisms from the IMF, for example, that the UK isn't doing enough to get the UK's economy moving.
Natalie, let's just pick up on a headline I saw earlier today saying Britain bracing itself for the return of the heatwave this week, sparking fears that many people could die.
Well, yes, I mean, there was a heat wave a couple of weeks ago, and then we saw some pretty torrential storms, actually, and the weather cooling down. But in the next few days, we are going to see temperatures soaring to above 30 degrees. People are recommended to not do too much physical activity. And we did see people, there were deaths because of the previous heat wave. So many areas of the country experiencing temperatures not common at all, record highs. So it is something that the people aren't used to dealing with.
And before I let you go, I have to ask you about the royal baby, Prince George, because his birth was much, publicized all around the world. Are people in the UK still very much obsessed with what's happening around Prince George?
Well, I think we certainly saw around the time of the royal birth a lot of excitement, a lot of celebrations in the wake of the baby's birth, especially because there was anticipation about when he was born, what his name would be. For example, people waiting for that all-important picture of Kate and William with baby George on the steps of the hospital. People now turning their eyes to how it could help the UK, how it could help the economy. We've seen predictions that the tourism sector is definitely going to get a boost from the birth of the royal baby. People from abroad even more interested in the royal family because they now have an additional member. And also brands that the royal baby has been associated with also expected to get a boost. So when we saw that picture last week of the baby wrapped in a swaddling, that brand's particular swaddlings have now sold out in many shops. The car seat he was being carried in as well. Now, we haven't seen any pictures of him, of course, since the day when he left the hospital. He is believed to be with Kate, his mother, William, his father, at Kate's parents' house. But certainly people will be looking out the next time they see him to see what he's wearing, to see what pushchair he could be in. We know that the Kate effect is a big phenomenon. Anything Kate wears sells out within hours. So very good for brands, she is. And we expect the royal baby to do the same.
Thank you very much. That was our correspondent in London, Natalie Fury. Now, our East Africa correspondent, Sarah Kimani, is standing by to give us an update from Nairobi. Very good evening, Sarah. Rebels in the DRC defied a U.S. deadline to disarm. What's the latest in the standoff between the UN and the M23 rebels?
Hello and a very good evening from a very chilly Nairobi. Welcome, Africa, to SABC News Channel. The latest from the deadline given by MONUSCO for all negative forces to disarm within 48 hours is that it remains calm in the DRC, in the eastern DRC. We still have not had any news of any forceful disarmament, and so we are still awaiting news. What we know for sure is that MONUSCO has issued a warning and a deadline that by tonight, everybody who has arms and they are illegally possessing those arms, they must surrender them either to MONUSCO or to the DRC forces, failure to which MONUSCO then will be forced to disarm them forcefully, and if need be, then they will have to, a fight will ensue between the two parties.
Please give us an update on the oil shutdown in South Sudan.
Well, South Sudan, what we know is that yesterday during the Great Lakes Summit, there was a meeting during the Great Lakes Summit. The vice president, the second vice president of Sudan, Al-Haj Yusuf, had a chance to explain the situation between the tensions between his country and South Sudan. And what he said is that his country believes that South Sudan is arming the rebels that are fighting the Khartoum government. Benjamin Mariel, who is the Foreign Affairs Minister designate for South Sudan, however, says that his country is not arming the rebels. And so what they have agreed is that they will give the African Union time to deal with it and to investigate. And so initially there was supposed to be a shutdown of the oil pipes yesterday. That has now been put on hold for 2 weeks. And Sudan says it seems like things are working out, and they are saying if the relations and that talks continue as they are going now, there actually may not be a shutdown.
Sarah, are there any major stories in that region that you are tracking and that you would like to pick up on?
Well, yes, it would be unfortunate if we left without talking about the teacher strike that was here in Nairobi. What has happened is that the teachers went back to work after being out of work for 3 weeks. But unfortunately, what has happened is that the government has said that the teachers will not be getting their pay. So what happens is that the teachers are now in school, but they are being decentralized, and so their pays have been late, and they're saying if they do not get their pays, they're all going to down their tools. But also today, we had a development where members of parliament refused to discuss or to debate a very important bill, the VAT bill, saying unless they're given their car grants, then they will not be going on recess, but they also will not be discussing or debating the VAT bill, which is very important because the Kenyan government is looking for money to be able to fund its day-to-day running, and considering that the government is facing a current account deficit, then they need this money. Back to you in studio.
That was our East Africa correspondent, Sarah Kimani.
We're going to stay in the region, actually, and Sarah did touch on it a little bit during that chat with Babakshani. Oil pipes to South Sudan may not be shut after all. Sudan's second vice president says that recent talks over an end to alleged rebel support by the South may just halt a possible oil shutdown by Khartoum. Sudan's Al-Haj Youssef says that his country is confident that the rebels in his country were receiving support from Juba, a claim denied by South Sudan. Sudan has in the meantime postponed 2-week notice to shut the oil pipes until the claims are verified.
Kenya remains concerned with the recurring tensions between the Republic of Sudan and the Republic of South Sudan. Being the guarantor of the comprehensive peace agreement between these nations, we indeed call for the quick political and diplomatic resolution of all outstanding issues.
They both need the oil revenue, but allegations of rebel support stands in the way of its flow. So each side sought to have leaders gathered at the Great Lakes Summit hear their story.
We are fully confident that they they receive support from the Republic of South Sudan because they are part of them.
Yes, indeed, we know those who are fighting in the Sudan because they were our former colleagues in the struggle. But when the two countries became two independent states, we completely ceased any support, either materially or in fact physically, in the Republic of Sudan.
In the midst of the seeming disagreement, they are clear the oil must flow.
The good relations and the good steps which have been taken in the last 2 weeks or so, I think will help, of course, that oil to continue and not to be stopped again. By having that oil passing to Port Sudan, we have benefit as a country, and the south of Sudan, of course, has benefit from that oil.
Khartoum had threatened to shut the oil at the end of July, but it has postponed the shutdown by 2 weeks to allow the African Union to investigate its complaints. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Kenya.
African Union Commission Chairperson Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma has declined to comment on how the AU views yesterday's Zimbabwean elections. She would only talk about what the AU is doing to help member states run elections better.
From where you sit, do we as a continent face a challenge of a credibility issue, if you like, around elections?
The AU has developed a charter on democracy that covers issues around elections and a whole range of areas around democracy. And if you look at the last 20 years, Africa has come a long way, and most countries are now democracies. They have regular elections, and they have regular change of governments. So I don't think we have any credibility issue as the AU when it comes to democracy and elections. We may not be exactly where we should be in 50 years, but I think we've come a long way and we're doing very well.
And what about specifically the role of the public at the level where we bring communities on board and making it clear to them that they too have a role to play, and this is not an organization that primarily listens to heads of state?
Well, I think when you talk elections, actually, that's where the public participates. The AU itself is supposed to be an organization that is also driven by its citizens. And from the AU side, we are engaging a lot more with the public in various formations, whether it's women, whether it's youth, whether it's intellectuals, artists, trade unions. We are actually engaging them, not only about the next 50 years agenda, but generally about issues. And when it comes to elections, the approach of the AU Commission is that we must assist countries to have successful elections. So one of the things that we are doing is to, besides training and so on, we also get what we call long-term observers, and we send them months or weeks before the elections so that they can go into the country, not to talk with governments, but generally to talk with the people on the ground, what their experience is, what is going on, and if they need to raise issues with the officials or with the IEC, they raise those issues. So that by the time the election comes, we have a pretty good idea of what is the lie of the land, what are the challenges, what are the plans. And that's what we have been doing. That's what we did in Kenya. That's what we do everywhere, especially where we think there is likely to be a big focus on that election based on what had happened before.
We now cross to Stellenbosch, where Cape Town's Executive Mayor, Patricia de Lille, is standing by. A very good evening to you, Mayor de Lille. Could you give us your thoughts on the project?
Well, I think it's fantastic that the public broadcaster, the SABC, will be able to broadcast news 24 hours a day in all our languages, especially for people like myself that are not always able to see the 7 o'clock bulletins. It will help us to stay up to date. But a little bit of advice that when you schedule people to come on, that you should also try and be on time to do that.
Now, Mayor, in your opinion, because we've had several challenges in the run-up to this, will the SABC be able to fulfill its mandate as a public broadcaster through this initiative?
As a public broadcaster in all languages in our country, you can only fulfill your mandate if you also make sure that you cover all the regions in our country so that you get the views from all South Africans. But I'm confident that the SABC will rise to the occasion and bring us the news from all the different regions and provinces within our country.
You and your mayoral committee members currently locked in a discussion at Devon Valley Wine Farm. What's the purpose of those talks?
We've just been in office for 2 years now, and we are doing an assessment and an evaluation of what we still need to do, what are the outstanding issues, what are the challenges, because, you know, when we were elected in 2011, we made certain promises to the people of Cape Town, and we have to ensure that we meet those promises before the end of our term. So mayoral committee members are all here, we are having fun, we are seeing all our challenges as what we can do better and how we can improve in what we are doing. And I'm very excited that, you know, Cape Town will remain the best run metro in our country.
Now, recently there's been a spate of protests concerning portable toilets, the so-called poo wars. What are you doing to address this issue?
The City of Cape Town has delivered more than 7,000 portable flush toilets to areas where it is not possible to deliver normal flush toilets. And we will continue to do that. We have been able to eradicate some of the bucket system. We still have got more than 700 black bucket system toilets in Cape Town. And the idea of coming with the portable flush toilets was to assist us to eradicate the bucket toilets. But we will get there.
Mayor, thank you very much for your time. We do apologize in the delay in crossing to you. I can only put it down to teething problems, and we will get it right in the future.
All right, so that was Patricia Dill talking to us from Cape Town. And as we promised you, we're going to be crisscrossing across the country, crossing our borders, going to other continents. And right now, we go to the windy city, Port Elizabeth. And Tammy Dixon is there, and he's going to be telling us the kind of things that are going to be coming out of the Eastern Cape on the SABC News channel in the future. A very good evening to you, Tammy.
Thank you very much, Peter. Good evening. My name is Tammy Dixon from Port Elizabeth. Welcome to the great province of the Eastern Cape, the home of the founding president of our democracy, Nelson Mandela. It's a region steeped in political history and with a great heritage of the liberation struggle. We will crisscross this province from big cities to the rural areas to bring you stories of hope, people defying the odds to change their lives, but also sad stories of hardships, poverty, and broken promises. We will show you the economic strength of the Eastern Cape, its potential for growth in renewable energy and job creation, as well as its ability to facilitate South Africa's trade with the world through its ports. Tourism is also central to the economy of the Eastern Cape because of its beautiful scenery and attractive beachfronts, as well as fascinating wildlife that sets this province apart. The Eastern Cape is also a sport hub, hosting international events in different sporting codes, some of which you don't often see on television. With this new channel, we aim to change that. Now, for a quick update on the top stories we've been following this side today, let's cross to my colleague Janine Lee at the iconic Nelson Mandela Stadium on the other side of the friendly city. Hello, Janine.
Thanks, Tommy, and good evening. I'm Janine Lee, and I'm here in the Southern Kings' backyard. Unfortunately, I've got nobody to play with because the Kings are all in Johannesburg getting ready for their second playoff promotion relegation game against the Lions. It's going to be a tall ask for the boys from the Bay. They lost here a week ago, 26-19 to the Lions in that first promotion relegation playoff. So they've really got their backs against the wall. They have to win by 8 points or a bonus try to stay in the Super 15 to keep their Super 15 franchise. If they lose, it's going to be a big loss, not only for sport, but also on the economic front as well. And you must know for a couple of years that the Eastern Cape and Port Elizabeth in particular has been starved of Super 15 rugby. So I think all their fans will be behind them. But we've just heard that Ellis Park is a sellout for Saturday's game. So I think they're going to be playing 16 people and not 15, with the 16th man being the crowd. It's going to be a tough one. Other stories in our province today, the ANC Lekotla coming out of East London. Our Bishu office is covering that one. And some of the topics coming out of there, service delivery, both at provincial level and at local government level. Very important, this Lekotla, because as you know, the municipal elections coming up early next year, and service delivery has been on everyone's lips. Protests throughout the country and here in the Eastern Cape about a lack of service delivery. And another hot topic, the resignation of the Nelson Mandela Metro municipal manager. She resigned a day or two ago. So once again, the Metro with only an acting municipal manager, which delays a number of things and does result in service delivery protests and a lack of delivery here in the Metro. Those issues coming out of the Lekotla. We were going to be joined here by our Premier Nkolo Kiewicz, who wanted to be here to wish the SABC well with this new launch, but our Bishu office caught up with her a little bit earlier today. Take a listen and see what she had to say.
Let me take this opportunity to congratulate SABC for the thought of creating a platform that will contribute a great deal in nation building through effective communication, by sharing information and developing an informed citizenry. that is necessary for any country to progress and to progress to a point where it is recognized as a country of note amongst the nations of the world. And therefore, this platform indeed will go a great deal in building the South African nation. And we hope that SABC editorial will use this tool effectively in contributing to nation building.
That was Premier Nokolo Kivet wishing the SABC well as we launch our new platform. A big thank you to our team out in PE, Janine Lee and Tommy Dixon. We now cross live to our reporter Blaine Herman in Durban for what the KwaZulu-Natal region has in store for us. Good evening, Blaine.
Very good evening to you, Vibhakshni, and welcome to this special broadcast. We're coming to you live from our studios in the port city of Durban. Indeed, it is a special occasion, the launch of our 24-hour news channel. Now, we're coming to you from a province that's bound to be in the news quite often. You know, KwaZulu-Natal is regarded as one of South Africa's leading domestic tourist destinations. It stretches from Port Edward in the south all the way to the borders of Swaziland and Mozambique in the north. Now, it is indeed a vast province, Vibhakshni, but you can be rest assured, you know, that we have every single inch of this province covered, bringing the latest news as it happens. Now, KwaZulu-Natal carries close to 20% of South Africa's population. Well over 10.3 million people live in this province, making it the second largest populated province in South Africa. Now, let's talk a bit more about this province and some of the more pertinent issues emanating from here. We're joined by Professor Ruth Tia Tomaselli, the chair of the communication from the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It is indeed a special occasion, the launch of our 24-hour news channel. With that in mind, what sort of role do you think the public broadcaster will play, especially in KwaZulu-Natal?
Well, I think, Blaine, one of the most exciting things about this is precisely that it gives us the space to move the center of the universe away from Johannesburg and into the provinces to a greater extent. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is probably going to be the best part of this, is that it will allow for more space, more interest, more time to be spent in the provinces, and especially in this province where we have such an outstanding infrastructure within news production.
Indeed it is. You have your ears close to the ground. What sort of expectations do you think the public have for our 24-hour news channel?
Well, of course, it fits into a whole media ecology. There are lots of channels out there. Some of them are international, some of them are local. We have an outstanding set of radio broadcasts. So the question is, what is this channel going to bring that is added value? And I think that one of the things that it will bring is precisely to be able to mobilize the huge network that the SABC has, the huge news network that the SABC has that is relatively underutilized, and to give it yet another platform, and perhaps a bigger visual platform and a national platform to be able to perform on. And I think that what the expectations that from this channel will be very similar to the expectations that we've always had, some of which have been fulfilled, some of which have been a little iffy sometimes, around reliability, diversity, human interest, lots and lots of human interest, perhaps less politics, more analysis, more in-depth stories. It's exactly the same agenda, and that agenda is not going to change. Those challenges are always going to be there.
Let's just talk a bit about our journalists on the field, telling the KZN KwaZulu-Natal story. Mm-hmm. What sort of challenges do you envisage our reporters having on the field?
Two kinds of challenges. The first one is a slightly myopic view of what constitutes news and what constitutes national news. And sometimes the provinces, and particularly I think KwaZulu-Natal, gets left off of that agenda. And that is something that we have to also, as Natalians, we also have to take responsibility for and move around. We can't wait for somebody to dish that up to us. And secondly, KwaZulu-Natal is a large, as you've said, very populous, but also very difficult terrain. Many of the most interesting places in KwaZulu-Natal in which so many really outstanding things are happening at a human interest level, are difficult to access. The networks of railways, of roads and telecommunications may not be as good as we want.
Yeah.
And it just means that we have to put in an extra effort to be able to cover those areas.
Professor, that's where we'll have to leave it. Professor Ruth Tia-Thomaselli from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Now, it is indeed a big province, this KwaZulu-Natal, but our crack team of reporters are up for the challenge, bringing you the latest news and views. Take a look.
Okay. Rain, weather, it looks quite ominous.
SABC.
I am Mhlongo, SABC News.
Linda Mkopozi, SABC.
The sight of Mandela casting his ballot can be regarded as one of the most memorable moments in world politics.
Basola lomlisa ngokuphatha ngesihluku izingane ezincane kule ndawo. Izabenza SABC nguthulane msimanga.
Lane Herman, SABC News.
The Wildlife Authority said it was confident in its anti-poaching methods and its management of rhino in its reserves.
The Top Gear Festival returning to Durban so he can get his shoes back.
The Top Gear Festival will be staged for the second time in Durban in successive years on the 15th and 16th of June.
Msawake Maisela, SABC News, Durban.
There you go. Top news for a top nation. That's how we wrap up things from KwaZulu-Natal. More to come over the next couple of days, but first, it's back to Johannesburg.
Thank you very much, Blaine Herman, and the rest of the news team in Durban. Fantastic scenes coming out of there. My hometown, Peter.
Yes.
Setting the bar very high.
Well, we certainly have great expectations there. I mean, there's a stellar cast in terms of journalists and producers certainly coming out of the East Coast there. And as you say, for Bakshina, it's a great hometown.
It certainly is. Looking forward to more news and stories coming out of Durban.
All right. Well, we move from the East Coast and let's go to the north of our province, where a new premier has been appointed in Limpopo to replace Castle Matale, who recently resigned. Premier Stanley Mtabata is faced with a mammoth task to rectify the province's financial status, which led to the taking over of 5 departments by the National Intervention Team. We cross there now live for more. Premier, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you and good evening, Peter.
All right, so we're busy trying to establish. Are you there, Premier? All right.
Yes, I am.
Okay, Premier, we understand that you've literally just got into your office and you've probably had to hit the ground running. What challenges have you already identified in your new job?
Oh, like you correctly put it, Peter. About five departments are put under Section 100B, and that is the biggest challenge, the first biggest challenge that one is facing currently. But the other challenge that one is facing is the issue of the systems that are, the control mechanisms that are being violated or non-existent. I think those are the biggest challenges, the 2 biggest challenges that I'm facing. But the Section 100B, I wouldn't say is that much of a challenge because it's supposed to be an intervention mechanism. So I have already met with the ministers responsible, and we are in the process of working together to deal with this serious deficiencies that I'm talking about. That of lack of systems and the home bodies who are violating the existing systems.
Do you have the right team in place, or do you envisage bringing more people and, I suppose, reshuffling, changing things to get the right people to help you turn things around?
Yes, I think currently, in the first week that I've been in office, already I would say I've been able to at least assemble a team, a very good team and highly experienced team, which is ready to work, which has already started dating their hands, working very hard to rectify these problems that I'm talking about. The team of 10 MECs, which are dealing with the problems, and we are currently dealing with the systems, the people within the various departments and the control mechanisms within the departments. We are actually dealing with those problems now.
You talk about systemic failures, but I would put it to you that also sometimes, things like corruption can also become cultural, that it starts to become almost usual practice. How do you start to turn around people's attitudes to these kinds of things?
No. If a child thinks every light is that of an electric bulb, you actually have to light to light a candle in front of him and make him touch it. And once it burns him, he will realize that there's a difference between these two lights. So what we are going to do, and we have already started doing now, is to where there is that type of custom or that type of culture, we are actually dealing with it in terms of building the necessary systems, or perhaps in cases where you realize that these people are now incorrigible, we actually charging those people.
All right.
We have already started pressing charges upon people.
On a political platform, your province has been challenged quite a bit. Would you say that your arena has started to find some kind of unity? Are you happy with the kind of talks that have been taking place and the steps that you've been taking to find some kind of cohesion going forward? Because you all have to work together to get the province right.
What do you mean by the political platform?
Sorry?
You mean in the political... What are you referring to? The political organization, the leading party, or are you referring to the politics in government?
The politics within your party.
Within the leading party?
Yes.
Yes, Peter, I'm trying by all means to make it a point that I don't get involved in those dynamics, because really I don't think it will help the situation in this province if the premier or the government, the leadership within government, is going to entangle itself with those kind of dynamics that you are talking about. I'm leaving that because the ANC has appointed a provincial task team. I'm actually saying that I'm going to leave there to the provincial task team and concentrate on the things that I'm talking about. Concentrate on trying to rebuild the systems. Concentrate on assessing as to whether I do have the right warm bodies within the post, within the organizational structure. And if that is not the case, I deal with that, irrespective of who says what. And that is the mandate that I got from the presidency.
All right. Well, we certainly wish you the best of luck in your endeavours with turning things around with your province. Premier, thank you very much for your time and sharing your thoughts with us this evening.
You're welcome, Peter.
All right. That was the Premier of the Limpopo province speaking to us.
The DA's Annette Combrink has taken up her position as mayor of Tlokwe. This after the ANC gave up an attempt to undo her election through the courts. The Northwest municipality has been in turmoil in recent weeks. The former ANC mayor Mapetle was unseated after some 14 ANC members voted with the DA to install Combrink. Those members were subsequently expelled from the party. Now the ANC says it will win back its seats in upcoming by-elections. Let's cross over to that province. We have political analyst Professor Andre Dovenacher standing by. A very good evening to you, Prof. Is it a realistic expectation that the ANC can win back Tlokwe in the by-elections?
Good evening. I think there's a chance they can win back the elections, by-elections, when it's coming up on the 18th of September, but they need to win at least 5 of the 10 by-elections in order to ensure that their position is safe. My own assessment is going to be difficult for them, a lot more difficult than in the previous elections. So in that sense, I think opposition parties has a stronger chance than in the past to retain the position of keeping Tlokwe under opposition control.
Would you say Tlokwe's municipality is in a state of anarchy?
I won't say it's in a state of anarchy. But what I can say is that there's an influx going on, a lot of instability, and as a result of that, there's not a lot of service delivery at the moment. There's a lot of, let's put it, lack of administration and continuity within the structures in the system. And we hope now, with Professor Annette Combrink there, that this will go in a certain direction and that they will consolidate their position and start deliver services, taking decisions in a proper way.
Now, the way the saga has played out, it's highlighting deep divisions within the ANC. How do you think they can remedy that situation?
Well, this is the big challenge for the ANC at this point. We know that these divisions is coming over a very long time, over the past decade or more, and my own assessment is that the ANC as organization in the province is in a phase of decay. They find it extremely difficult to get their organization going. There's a lack of discipline. There's a lot of internal conflict and strife, not only within Tlokwe, but also in other areas like Naka, Mudiri, Molema, and other places in the province.
Now, DA's Annette Combrink saying earlier that she's willing to work with those 14 ANC councillors who helped to unseat Mapetle. What do you make of her assertions?
Well, it is clear to me that the Democratic Alliance is taking full advantage of the divisions within the context of the ANC. And from a strategic point of view, if I was the opposition leader, I will definitely try my utmost to accommodate these people. We know with the coming by-elections on the 18th of September, putting these candidates against the ANC, they will definitely stand a stronger chance winning that by-elections. Therefore, my assessment is that the ANC is going to find it more difficult to retain Tlokwe in comparison to past elections.
That was political analyst Andre Dovenacher. Thank you very much for your time putting Tlokwe into perspective for us. Peter?
Well, Vibhakshini, as we've been saying all night, one of the things that we're very proud about this dedicated news channel is the ability that we'll have to be travelling right across the country, whether it's the north, the east, the south. Right now, we're going to be going to another region as we speak to our reporter, Palisa Matane, who's going to be speaking to us about President Jacob Zuma's visit to Botshabelo in the Free State tomorrow, where he's on a voter registration campaign. Palisa, thank you very much for joining us. Tell us about this proposed visit. What do we know and what's he hoping to achieve?
Well, Peter, tomorrow the president will be visiting Ward 36 in Botshabelo. Botshabelo is just about 60 kilometers from Bloemfontein. He will have a door-to-door visit, and he will also be visiting a school as well as the local police station there. He'll also go on a walkabout at the local shopping complex, and he will also be holding a mini rally where he'll be targeting the youth, addressing them about issues around gangsterism, because there's a lot of gangsterism in Botshabelo. In the past, we've seen a lot of violence in the area, even the community retaliating against some of the gangs in that area. But all of this is just basically to encourage people to go and register to vote in next year's elections.
All right. What sort of voter behaviour do we know in that region, in that area? I mean, are people engaged with politics? Are they concerned with politics? Are they likely to register in their numbers?
Oh, but Botshabelo is known to be a very politically active area. People are very much aware of the politics in the area. It's very much an ANC area as well.
All right, so he won't need to be doing much convincing. Is he going to be engaging with them? Will they be able to share their grievances with him? Do you know?
They should be able to share their grievances with them. As I said, he'll be going on a walkabout at the local shopping complex there. So people will definitely get a chance to interact with the president, you know, tell them some of their concerns and maybe even share some of their compliments.
And what have the people of Botshabelo been saying?
Well, at the moment, there's a lot of excitement in Botshabelo, a lot of anticipation, but we'll give you all of that tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Palesa, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, and we'll certainly be crossing you tomorrow to get an update on the President's visit and get a fuller report on that. Vivakshini?
Now, Peter, we're reaching the end of our launch program, and how better to end a show than with a tribute to Nelson Mandela. The National Council of Provinces today paid tribute to the former president. It's the first time one of the Parliament's houses has debated Mandela's legacy since the former statesman was admitted to hospital over a month ago.
NCOP chairperson Mninwa Mhlangu led the tributes, saying there weren't enough words to describe the ailing statesman.
When we speak of Nelson Mandela, we run short of words to describe him. One can call him a revolutionary, a rationalist, strong leader, visionary, patriot, selfless leader, reconciler, a man of courage.
Others said Madiba's name and deeds resonate around the world.
His name has become globally synonymous with our struggle, our victory, and the champion of national reconciliation, and perhaps South Africa's greatest icon.
Members of opposition parties also had high praise.
For his leadership qualities and individual integrity, he received more than 250 honors. The Nobel Prize in 1993, which he shared with President de Klerk, the US Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Order of Canada, the Soviet Order of Lenin, and many, many more.
Chairperson, let's keep the Mandela flame of hope burning by being fair and honest, true to the Constitution, and act impunity against anyone or any action that want to destroy the Mandela example and legacy.
Mandela remains in hospital where he is in a critical but stable condition. Lukhanyo Chalata, SABC News, Parliament.
All right, okay, still lots more to come on the news channel. Before that, though, let's recap our top stories this hour. Zimbabwe looks set for more political turbulence. The opposition MDC has declared yesterday's election a farce, while the ruling party, ZANU-PF, has claimed a landslide victory. Final results are not yet announced officially.
Judge Francis Lehodi has resigned from the Arms Deal Commission. The commission is probing the 90s arms deal.
The National Council of Provinces has paid tribute to former President Nelson Mandela. It's the first time one of Parliament's houses has debated Madiba's legacy since the former statesman was admitted to hospital over a month ago. Right, and that's where we end the beginning of this historic broadcast.
Very first broadcast under the belt.
Yes, SABC Prime, the first show. There's many shows, many anchors that you're going to meet over the coming days, the coming hours, but it's been great.
It has, and we certainly will be picking up with you at a later stage. We've got Business Review coming up from myself and the rest of the news team here. Thank you for joining us for this launch, and we look forward to your continued support.
All right, and don't forget, Channel 404 is where it's at if you want to keep in touch with what's happening across the country, in the region and the world. This is SABC News. Thank you very much for joining us, and stay for us with the business coming up just now.
South Africa, welcome to the SABC News Channel, the channel that aims to provide you with all the daily breaking news and live updates.
Parliament Chief Financial Officer Leslie Mondo was also sacked last month. Rianne Green, SABC News.
With broadcasts of events of national importance and cover daily news from the continent and beyond. Coming soon on DSTV Channel 404, SABC News, Africa's news leader.
I was taking the teaser on this one.
For decades, the SABC has provided a ringside seat
for the events that have made history in South Africa and across the globe.
The SABC has opened a window on our world.
We talk to people making the news,
so you can make sense of events
in your preferred language.
And moments in history that truly changed the world.
Whenever news happens, you are there.
Because SABC News is there.
When you want it. Our news gathering draws from the SABC's extensive network across the globe.
At the heart of it all is this state-of-the-art studio.
And from the sports field, all the interviews, color,
and in-depth analysis from around the world.
It's comprehensive.
It's trusted.
This is SABC News,
Africa's news leader.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for